The US pharmaceutical market is the largest by far. It accounts for almost half of the world's pharmaceutical spending. An average American pays about $1,100 a year on medicines. Compare that with only $500 for a Brit and less than $250 for a Dane. And it's not really because Americans pop more pills or they're sicker than the rest of the world. An average American just pays vastly more for the same amount of prescription drugs than the rest of the world. Here's the cost comparison between Americans and the rest of the world for some of the world's leading prescription drugs. Americans pay 80% more for Humira, 100% more for Avastin, and 50% more for Harvoni. This difference is actually a function of the disjointed American healthcare system. If you're a pharmaceutical company out with a new drug and you want to sell it around the world, you'd have to get approval from each country's drug regulator. The regulators and their partners ask 4 basic questions from a new drug applicant. Is it safe? Does it work? Is it better than what's already out there? And finally, is it affordable? These last 2 questions, on availability and affordability, is important for setting the price of a new drug. For example, consider Australia. The government body called the Pharmaceutical Benefits Advisory Committee will tell the Australian national healthcare system what price to buy a new drug at. The pharmaceutical company has the option of either taking up the offered price or giving up on the Australian market entirely. But the US drug regulator, the FDA, does not ask these last 2 questions, only the first 2. So as long as your drug is safe and effective, the FDA allows you to launch it in the US market at whatever price you deem fit, and let the free market decide whether that price is appropriate. Also, the US does not have a national healthcare system that can negotiate a low price for a bulk order. Instead, in the US, it fails to the hundreds of hospital chains, insurance companies, and other buyers to negotiate their own price. Small orders means higher price. That's then passed on to the US consumer. Are there any positive sides to the story of high American drug prices? Well, for one thing, the US consumer has more medicine choices than the rest of the world. So a patient who can afford it has the luxury of trying out multiple medications to see what suits her the best. And there's a more indirect result. The promise of making large profits in the US encourages pharma companies to invest amounts in new drug R&D. Without the US market, drug companies would be hesitant to do this with the knowledge that the rest of the world's advanced markets will work to curtail their pricing. I mean, no company ever made a new drug hoping to recoup its costs in Australia. Given the scenario, it would be appropriate to say that the US consumer pays for new drug research that the rest of the world subsequently enjoys. That's the dilemma of the largest pharma market in the world: how to balance innovation with affordability.